So once again, we start with our map. And this time we look at only one layer, stuff. Okay, layer number 6. Stuff, or rather what the Buddhist and yogic tantrics call Vastu, includes all objects, all events, all artifacts. Even things such as, nature outside, the trees, the sand, the ground, the sky, the clouds. It's all stuff. Okay, that's all Vastu. Even things like the government, countries, political parties, education, religions, nation states, money, your phone apps, the apps in your phone, drugs, foods, drinks, planets, galaxies, and all that. You get the picture, right? Everything that is not you is Vastu. Even other people that are not you is Vastu. Your friends, your family, if you have a partner, your partner, if you have kids, your kids, they're all Vastu. Okay? Anything that is not myself, the thing which you call myself, anything that is not that, and that is not the other layers, it's external physical stuff around you, that is all Vastu. Okay? So that means that you are not Vastu to yourself, but to other people, you are Vastu to them because they are their own myself. You see what I mean? So you are Vastu to somebody else. They are Vastu to you. Vastu is anything in the physical reality that is not myself. Okay? That is what is defined as Vastu or stuff. Okay? You are Vastu to other people and other people are Vastu to you. Now, Vastu has the properties of duality, of form, and formlessness. That much is obvious, right? I think everybody realizes that the stuff around us comes and goes, These are things that occupy space, they occupy time. One day we don't have them, and then we have them, and then we don't have them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't like them. In other words, they're always changing. And this is a huge property, a prime property of duality, like we saw when we were looking at the yin-yang symbol, okay? Duality, form and formlessness. That is a huge property of Vastu, okay? You cannot remove this property from Vastu. You have to accept that that's the nature of that reality. All Vastu is impermanent. It comes and goes. And when it's there, it changes its nature. Impermanence is the property of Vastu. Now, you can enjoy Vastu, you can enjoy stuff without being identified with it. You don't have to be identified with it to enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with stuff. Stuff is great. That's why it's here. It's for us to use and to enjoy. So there's nothing wrong with liking stuff. You don't need to renounce stuff, Renunciation is not about being a monk, getting rid of everything and having absolutely nothing and staying in a cave or a monastery. Not at all. That is not what renunciation means. That is a misunderstanding that has become very popular. A renunciate, a true renunciate, at least in the yogic tantric tradition or Buddhist tantric tradition, and by now I hope you're realizing that tantra is not about sexual positions. That's another misunderstanding. Because, in the West, when we hear tantra, we think of tantric sex, because I don't even know how that crazy stuff started, but it's somebody who probably went to the East and noticed. That's another story. I don't want to digress, but there's a reason why that sort of misunderstanding arose, but that's not the subject of this particular lesson. So let me not even tell you that story. Okay, cool. Let's get back to what we're doing. So renunciation simply means not identifying with stuff. When you identify with stuff, you suffer. Like we saw, because stuff is impermanent. And so when you identify with that which is impermanent, when it comes and you wanted it to not be there, you will suffer. When it goes and you want it to remain forever, you will suffer. You see, when you identify with the impermanent, you will try to attach to it or resist it. Whenever you attach, whatever you're attached to may one day go, whether you like it or not. And whatever you resist may one day come, whether you like it or not. And that is why identification, attachment, and resistance creates suffering. It's very simple. Impermanence, attachment or identifying to impermanence creates suffering eventually. So the teaching here is enjoy the stuff. Don't try and get rid of it. Don't try and say, oh, I'm so pious, I'm not into stuff. You know, you don't need to do that. So enjoy stuff, but never form an identity with it. That is the value of detachment. Learn to enjoy stuff with detachment. Okay? Now, unfortunately, our society has conditioned us to really identify with stuff. Really identify with stuff. You know, our television promotes this image, movies promotes this image, whatever, our school system, everything. In fact, our status and our sense of self-worth is very much attached to stuff in our current society. You know, our education is attached to stuff. We learn not so that we can, you know, education originally was designed to draw wisdom from inside you outwards. Education comes from the root word that means to draw out. But nowadays, we don't draw out anything in our kids. Instead, we drum shit in. Like we really like bash nonsense into the kid rather than trying to draw out the wisdom that is already within the kid. So education has become reversed, and it has become, oh, go to school so you can get a job and, you know, blah, 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 and get a mortgage and be a meaningful contributor to society. So we have attached so much meaning to stuff, to Vastu, that we go to education just so we can accumulate Vastu and try and keep it. Now, that is not normal or healthy. It is a learned sickness, okay? And I can prove to you that it's learned, and it's, you know, because when you look at the indigenous and aboriginal cultures of the planet all over the world, you know, in Australia, in North America, in South America, in Africa, in Asia, excuse me, in Europe, there were indigenous aboriginal cultures all over the world. And they were able to enjoy the earth and leave no footprint, you know? And so on. Some of them obviously were very primitive. So I'm not suggesting that we become primitive, but some of them were very advanced civilizations that maybe right now we've kind of lost all history of them, but we can see what they left behind. You know, they built structures that were non-polluting, but lasted forever. Things like the pyramids. You know, we look at the pyramids today and we just see a dead triangle and we think, oh, that's a tomb for Pharaoh. Well, that's kind of like finding a refrigerator without electricity and thinking it's a box, it's a suitcase. It's only when you plug in the refrigerator, you realize it's not a suitcase, not a box, it's a thing that has a technology. But right now the pyramids are turned off. We don't know what they did. But it's amazing they've survived ice ages, or at least one ice age. They have survived earthquakes that have destroyed everything else, you know. So we do know that there are civilizations, ancient ones, that were very advanced, very powerful. Some of them have left mythologies such as, you know, whatever. Some of them we see their traces, and some of them are still current indigenous tribes that are able to live in balance and harmony. So you don't have to become attached to Vastu to enjoy it, okay? So this is the madness of attaching our self-worth and status to Vastu, to stuff, is programmed into us by our current civilizational society. Okay? You can enjoy stuff without identifying with it. And so much of humanity today is trapped in a matrix of socialization, of domestication, conditioning, of, you know, programming that keeps us all hooked to this chasing and acquiring of stuff and trying to keep it against all odds, and that makes us suffer. And the suffering is because of one small thing. This is what I'm trying to sort of bring to light. It is the identification with the impermanent. That is a problem. It's not the thing itself that is a problem. The stuff is all right. It's identification to it that creates suffering. And not just at this level, but also on the other levels, as we shall soon see. And until we awaken and detach from this identification, with the identification with one or two levels at the expense of the other levels, until we become an untethered soul, our suffering will continue and our freedom will be limited. That is the mechanics of it. That is how the game works. And as you will increasingly see throughout this course, when we identify, when our awareness gets hooked by attachment and resistance to any one layer, this or the other layers, what happens is our beingness closes down. We sort of shrink. We become as small as the layer that we are attached to. We lose our awareness of the rest of everything else. And in that way, we lose our power. And we also become very easily manipulated. For example, someone who is heavily identified with the concept of a country, like, my country is the greatest country in the world. This kind of person is very easily convinced to go to war with another country in the name of patriotism. How many soldiers have gone to war over things they have no idea? Like they're in the battleground thinking, what the hell am I doing here dying? I don't even understand what the beef is or what's happening. And they've been lied to. But they bought the lie because they were very identified with the aspect of Vastu called country. So it was easy to manipulate them. Someone who is heavily identified with money, for example, is easily convinced to exchange vast portions of their lives in the singular pursuit of money, even at the expense of their own health, at the expense of their family, at the expense of everything else, Someone who is heavily identified with appearances is easily influenced by advertisers of merchandise. They're told, buy this, buy that, all sorts of weird stuff. This will make you better, look better. This will make you stand out better. You know what I mean? So you can sell them all sorts of crap just because they're identified with the stuff. And because it's impermanent, you can always upgrade them. Tell them, we have the new latest shade of lipstick, which looks exactly like the old shade of lipstick, but this one is called version 2. And they'll buy it. You know what I mean? It's true. It's crazy. So the point here is not that we need to renounce stuff. Again, I have to repeat this point. That's not the point. There's nothing wrong with stuff. The point is to not get identified with, to not attach or resist, but simply to enjoy it and let it come and go with detachment. Okay? Renunciation of attachment and resistance. Not renunciation of stuff. Renunciation of attachment and resistance. Renunciation of identification. That's what a renunciate is. Now, that approach of detachment vastly reduces anxiety. When you're not all that identified with stuff or any other layer, your anxiety just melts, and it also promotes expansion. You become expanded. You find freedom. You find joy. You can go anywhere. You can do anything. You can relate with anyone when you're that free on this level and on all the other levels. When you're that free, when you surrender your attachment, your identification, when you surrender identity, you don't lose, you gain.